My name is Dominic Pages, and I'm the owner, CEO, and engineer producer here at Crystal Blue Sound Studios. I'm fascinated with the artists that come this way and wanted to share some of their stories, inspirations, and processes that evolve into songs. Today we have in the studio Tony Ballard. Good morning, Tony. Thanks for being here.
Hey, Nick. How you doing?
I'm doing great, thank you. Could you tell us a bit about yourself in regard to what you do and how you became a songwriter and an artist?
Well, right now I'm a communications professor at a local college. How did I become a songwriter? I fell in love. I got my heart broken. Same old story, you know. And I actually started out writing poetry, and some of the poems turned into lyrics for songs.
Cool.
But I wasn't a musician. I didn't know how to play guitar or anything at that time. And I started going to other people and asking them if they could put my songs, my lyrics to music. And once you include other people in the process, a lot of times the song changes. And that's great sometimes, but sometimes it's not. And so I decided I needed to learn how to play. And as time went by, I started writing more and more songs. And then I started reading a lot of spiritual material, primarily from the Baha'i writings. And a lot of those lyrics, a lot of those words are simply musical in themselves. And like a lot of other people, especially people in the Baha'i faith, we put the words to music and share that message.
That's awesome. That's amazing. So this is your third release. I know it's untitled right now. Could you share some insight on some of your previous projects before we get into this new one?
Sure. Well, I've been in a couple of bands, primarily people that also practice the Baha'i faith and read the Baha'i writings. And again, those writings inspire plenty of other musicians as well as myself. And so we formed a band. The first band I was in was called, I should remember the name of the band. I can't remember.
Perhaps Dawn Moth?
Okay. It was Dawn Moth. The truth is there was a band before that.
Oh, okay.
And that's the one I was thinking of.
For me.
I'm not sure we ever really had a name of that first band. But then I think we had a repertoire of maybe 3 songs.
That's interesting. Yeah. That's cool.
And then I moved on and became a part of Dawn Moth. Dawn Moth was had already formed, and I became a part of that. And we experienced some personnel changes. And as a result of that, we decided we need to make a CD. The two logically don't seem to go together, but they do. I just won't go through the whole history. And so we ended up making that first CD, which was called Soul Goes On. And CD I'm very much proud of, but it was a major learning process for me. And after that, Dawn Moth, we kind of went our separate ways, even though some of us are still in the area. But then, the inspiration, the stream of inspiration doesn't stop. And so, there's still more songs, there's still more, again, inspiration. And so I decided I wanted to, again, try recording again. And while the band that I ended up being a part of is called Souls of the Fireside, it's more of a musical co-op, I like to think. People kind of come and go. But we ended up making a second CD with Souls of the Fireside, and it's called New Day Coming. And again, more learning. It was a wonderful creative process and a really positive experience. But again, more inspiration. And so now I decided I'd like to try something more of a solo project. And so while I haven't given the CD a name yet, that's what we're working on now. Me and my good friend, Nick.
Oh, well, that's fascinating. I've just always noticed working with you through the years that you always have this intent to really be bring value to the world with your music. Is that something you've always had, or is that something that just kind of became cultivated with time?
Well, it's something I've always needed, and by association, I try to share it. But it's something that, for me, there are certain things that bring me a sense of peace and stability. And there's enough junk in the world. I don't want to add to that. And so my hope is always that while a lot of my writing may be, at least to some extent, for self-edification, if it ends up being shared, I'm always hoping that it'll have a positive effect on those people who hear it. And so in that way, I'm always striving to make it positive, yes. And frankly, again, with the Baha'i writings being my primary inspiration, I always say mainly our job, if we are going to attempt to put those words to music, is just don't screw it up, because the music is so often already in the words. And sometimes I screw it up, I'll admit, but the attempt is always to present it in the best way possible so that it has a very positive impact on the listener. Yeah.
That's terrific. You obviously must have been inspired. Any particular artists come to mind as far as...
Oh boy, that's kind of a problem. Sometimes when I let's say, you have your bank account or whatever, and they ask you the questions that are, security questions, and one of the questions often is, what's your favorite band? And mine is Sly and the Family Stone. Sylvester Stewart,
nice.
And which even back then, his message, very, very positive. I mean, but just very, very positive. A whole lot of other funk artists, I'll admit I love them, but I also love some other people, like almost anybody Motown, I'll admit that, but also Michael Franks, Kenny Rankin, Al Jarreau, Nora Jones. I should marry her if she only knew me. And
that's quite a list.
Yeah. So I'm kind of all over the place. Yeah.
That's terrific. Well, I'd be amiss if I didn't talk about the new batch, is what I'm calling it now. The new batch of songs. I've fallen particularly in love with this disc. It just speaks to me. How are these songs conceived?
I hate to keep saying it, but again, I was reading the Baha'i writings, and there are some things that just jump out at you. I'm going to take just a second out and talk about, this is part of the Baha'i faith, but a lot of these writings are prayers. Some are just verses for, again, spiritual edification, and many of them are just poetically written. And again, maybe the melody isn't in the music, but isn't in the lyrics or in the words. But it's there. It's there, and it's sort of. I think for anyone who reads it, if you are an artist, you become sort of a conduit for whatever messages you're getting from the words and what you're trying to add to it musically. I've heard other artists say the same thing, that a lot of times you write something, but you didn't write it; it came through you, and this is what happens a lot of times. And so with this, I wanted it to have. With this particular disc, I certainly wanted to be, again, positive. There's one song up there called One Perfect Rose. That actually started out as a children's song, frankly. But the more I wrote it, the more I'm thinking, why should the kids have all the fun? And I decided that I wanted that to be up there. And it's a very positive song about meeting the manifestation of God, Baha'u'llah, in what's called the Rizwan Garden. But it's just a beautiful song to me. And then there were some other things that I wanted to have a certain level of reverence to it for worship purposes or meditative purposes.
Nice.
And so I kind of wanted to have that mix, always positive, but sometimes a little more upbeat and sometimes very, very kind of settled and quiet. So, yeah.
I really love that concept to allow your listeners to, get quiet and can, absorb, what's been, sang and spoken in those songs. So that's what's terrific. So finally, after this studio work is done and the CD's out there for the masses to listen to, is there any plan for any live performances?
There's always a plan. There's always a plan. Where is anybody's guess? But the short answer is yes. The longer answer is wherever I can get a chance to play, or we can get a chance to play, because there are some people that I do play with. I'll go ahead and say it right now. Daryl King is one of the main ones. He's an amazing musician who was on New Day Coming.
Yeah, I like Daryl.
So I play a lot with Daryl, and sometimes we work with pre-recorded music, but a lot of times it's acoustic sets. And sometimes it's at Baha'i centers in the area, or if someone else elsewhere calls and asks if we can come out there and play. So the answer is always yes, as much as we possibly can. Yeah.
Well, that's terrific. Tony Ballard, thanks for being on the show, and good luck with the new disc once we get a title.
Thanks a lot, Nick. Thanks a
Where
lot.
there is love, nothing is too much trouble. And nothing is too much trouble where there is love. Where there is love, nothing is too much trouble. And there